friends, a warm welcome to all of you. I, CA Dipti Jain, founder Gyanstation, an online global platform for CA, CS, CMA, corporates, law practitioners, and for professionals from diverse fields. Welcome you on today's session. Gyanstation is on a mission to facilitate you in your journey of knowledge, professional growth, career building, and self-development. Here we motivate you and want to make everyone believe that every dream, every goal is achievable. Be the dreamer, be the alchemist of your life. So today we have gathered for a very important session that is tax recent amendments into tax audit, and which will and we have got the galaxy of panelists with us: CA Rajesh Mehta sir, Vice President of TBIF, and CA Piyush Thajer ji, tax litigation expert from Mumbai. So without taking much time, I request CA Akshay Vijawat, our team member, to kindly introduce today's chief guest, CA Rajesh Mehta sir. Over to you, Akshay.
Thank you so much, Dipti ma'am. Hello everyone, I am CA Akshay Vijawat, here to welcome CA Rajesh Mehta sir, a tax expert, for their views on tax audits. CA Rajesh ji Mehta sir, FCA and DISA qualified from ICAI. He is presently National Vice President of All India Federation of Tax Practitioners in Central Zone, and also held position of Chairman, Secretary, and Joint Secretary for the same. He has achieved rank in merit list in higher secondary examination in Rajasthan, and also awarded by Governor of Rajasthan. He received award in election and debate competition, awarded by ex-Chief Minister of Rajasthan. He has been speaker on various issues like capital gain, tax audits, and TDS, HUF planning, etc. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Over to you, sir. Rajesh Mehta ji.
Thank you, Akshay ji. First of all, I congratulate the Gyanstation, a academic platform across the India during a very short span of time. With the great efforts of Dipti madam, the Gyanstation has gained a good popularity across the India in the academic fields and in the various topics, income tax, GST, other so many issues on so many topics. Gyanstation has organized good webinars, and which has been admired from all the tax professional and all the industrialist and business field. And today I am again giving thanks to madam for giving me an opportunity to interact with all of you. Today we are having a learned speaker, a renowned speaker from Mumbai, CA Piyush Thajer ji, on the topic of tax audit. We all the chartered accountant and all the businessmen, industrialists have day-to-day many problems. Even if tax audit is done once in a year, but for carrying out the smooth tax audit after the close of the financial year, the chartered accountant, the businessmen, all the industrialists, all the accountants, all the tax practitioners have to keep in mind day to day the rules and regulation. Say for example, anyone has made a payment of rupees 1 lakh to any contractor. If he has not taken care of the deducting the TDS, then at the end of the year, then at the time of the audit, he may have to incur the interest as well as late fees of TDS return filing and any other penalty and other consequences. There are so many things. Say for example, anyone has received rupees 5 lakh from an agriculturist. If he has not taken care of section 269 ST, or say for example, anyone who is a builder, he has taken rupees 5 lakh as in cash from any of his customer and he has not taken care of the section 269 SS, then such person may have to incur penalty equal to the amount being received by him. So there are so many serious consequences which cannot be cured at the time of tax audit. So he has to keep in mind during whole 365 days all these precautions. So today's webinar today's deliberation by our learned Piyush Hajerji will be a great useful for all the participants. So this is very good discussion is going to be held, because the tax audit is going not only remunerative for chartered accountant, but this is the very much basic thing which all the chartered accountants are doing since long. Even though every time, every day and every year we have to keep equipped ourselves with the tax audit latest developments, because tax audit rule, regulation, circular, notifications, every day there are so many changes in the Income Tax Act rule and various other provisions. So I am sure that Piyushji will be covering all these important things which we have to keep in mind. So thanks a lot to Gyanstation. My congratulations to Dipti Madam for organizing such a good webinars, and my best wishes to Piyush Chajerji.
Thank you, sir, for such a kind words. It matters a lot and gives lot of encouragement for a person to move ahead in his life. Thank you very much. Now I request Akshay to introduce our learned speaker, CA Piyush ji. Over to you.
Yeah. CA Piyush Chajerji. He is chartered accountant and DISA qualified from ICAI, is specialized in tax litigations and advisory in direct and indirect taxes, and also a speaker on various topics in direct taxes. He is a member of External Advisory Committee of RBI for Assets Reconstruction. Also, he is a member of various committees. Over to you, sir. A very warm welcome to you.
Sir, you are on mute. Kindly unmute.
Thank you, Akshay, for the introduction. Gyanstation, CA Dipti Jain, the convener, the guest of the honor for today, Rajeshji Mehta. I thank him for the opening remarks very much. And I thank the Akshay for also coordinating this session very well. And I thank all the esteemed members who are present today and who would be watching me live on the Facebook, which will remain, I believe, over there. So with this background, the topic given to me is issues on tax audit, with the more concentration on recent amendments in Section 44AB. We know Section 44AB has been amended with the limits of the tax audit, threshold limits have gone up in last 2 years. So I'll try to discuss what would be the impact and how the calculation will happen on that. When I'm touching 44AB, the obvious is that there is also audit involved in circumstances of Section 44AD also in certain cases. So I will also touch upon those points. Then I will take questions, issues which according to me are relevant in case of 44AD and 44AB. I'll touch on that. And after that, I will move on to the clause wise. And I have only considered very important clauses because there are certain clauses which may not require deliberation at every point of time. So I've considered certain important clauses which according to me requires deliberation, requires debate at every point of time. And as an auditor, it becomes very important that whenever you're doing the audit, you should look into it. So with this background, I will share my presentation. Akshay, it's my presentation is visible?
Yes, it is visible, sir.
Okay. So the main topic is issues in tax audit. As I said, I will be keeping it on important issues in tax audit. Before I go into as a matter of the practice, but everybody knows tax audit is a function of auditor, and it becomes very important to know the objective of tax audit. Why I am doing a tax audit? Though everybody knows because the tax audit first came in 1987, 87 or 88 somewhere. And why did the tax audit came? Before 87 or 88, the scrutiny of the assessee's case was compulsory. Every case of the assessee who was filing the return of income, his case was selected for compulsory scrutiny. So somewhere in 88, the government thought that it's very difficult to take so many cases into scrutiny and actually verify those scrutiny. It's better that let us make the selective scrutiny and at the same time introduce an audit. So whatever details are required for making a proper computation of income is available to them by way of a tax audit report. And with this objective of the tax audit report, which according to me, every chartered accountant professional, whenever he is doing it, and tax audit. You may be doing it for the period of 20 years, 30 years, your experience, but the objective should be kept in mind. Because if you know the proper objective, what was the reason behind why the tax audit came, obviously will be able to do much better justification to the audit which we are carrying. So basically the objectives of tax audit are, if you look into it, is examination or review of an account of any business or profession carried out by taxpayer. So it is the examination of an account. Obviously, please keep it in mind, when I talk of examination of accounts, the tax audit has a much bigger role when compared to a statutory audit, I'm telling you. Because in case of a statutory audit, in case of a tax audit, you also have to audit the financial statements. So when you are auditing the financial statements, you know very well whether you are issuing a report in 3CA or 3CB, it would be annexed with 3CB, and it would be further annexed with an audited financial statements. So your audited financial statements are must. Without an audited financial statements, your 3CA and 3CD is incomplete. And therefore, you have to audit the complete books of accounts. And therefore, when you are doing a tax audit, there are two things which a chartered accountant should keep it in mind. One is their knowledge in regard to an audit, that is applicability of accounting standards, applicability of auditing standards, and whether all the auditing standards have been applied while carrying out the audit, and the financial statements have been drawn and they are in conformity with the generally accepted accounting principles. This is the very important, and therefore examination or review of accounts of any business or profession carried out by taxpayer becomes an important aspect of the tax audit itself, because your accounts has to show through and fair view, and then I can issue a report in form number 3CA, 3CB or 3CB as the case may be. When I go further, the second objective of tax audit is to ensure correctness of implementation and proper compliance of tax provisions envisaged under the Act. Then therefore, that's why I said, other than the audit knowledge, audit expertise, you also have to have a fair knowledge of Income Tax Act. Because the objective of tax audit is to ensure correctness of implementation and proper compliance of tax provisions envisaged under the Act. Unless and until you are actually well versed with the Income Tax Act, you are updated with what the Act is happening, what are the amendments which are coming, or you are updated with the judgments which are coming day in, day out, it would be difficult for an auditor to ensure correctness of the implementation. And therefore, the knowledge of the Income Tax Act, constantly getting updation on the same, looking into amendments, debating on those amendments, which will ultimately result into executing your audit properly. Third, what is the objective from the department's perspective? Objective from the department's perspective is कि उनको एक रेडीमेड प्लेट मिल गया खाने के लिए. उनके पास उनका ऑब्जेक्टिव ये है कि टैक्स ऑडिटर जो चाहिए वो डिटेल फॉर्म 3CD में दे देगा, एंड आई विल गेट अ रेडीमेड प्लेट ड्यूरिंग द स्क्रूटिनी. मुझे कुछ वेरीफाई करना नहीं है. It is the auditor who will report what are disallowance under 40A1A, what are disallowance under 43B, how the depreciation is properly calculated or not. And all this will be available to him on a platter of the plate, and he has to only do a small verification and do an assessment based on that. So from the perspective of a department, for them it's very important only that the proper computation of income can be drawn. So that is the objectives with the different level. Our responsibility. Objectives of tax audit is known. We know what is the objective, and therefore, when the objectives of tax audit is quite severe, it also the severity of the objectives always brings responsibility along with it. So our responsibility is to express opinion on financial statements based on the audit conducted in accordance with the standards issued by the ICI. So you need to express an opinion. It is not only that you are signing a 3CA, 3CB, filling up form number 3CD, जो annexures बनना है, जो client ने दिया उसको verify कर दिया, and then you are just reporting it. It's not that. As I said, 3CA, 3CD has to be annexed with the financial statements, and once those are annexed with the financial statements and the financial statements are certified by it, you have to express an opinion on that. If you are expressing an opinion, and if you want to give some disclaimer of opinion, negative opinion, or if you want to say something in that opinion, there is an advocate provisions available in the main audit report, that is 3CA and 3CB, to report that, and that is our responsibility. 2. When I am doing an audit of financial statements, obviously I am required to obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Audit evidence has to be taken for each and every reporting item, for each and every reporting financial statements. I have to ensure that audit evidence is sufficient and appropriate as required by my auditing standards. So my auditing standards has to be looked into it, has to be verified, has to be mapped with the evidence which I am collecting while doing the audit of financial statements or while reporting it from 3CB. Third, to verify the statement of particulars required to be filed under 44AB. So whatever I am filing, whatever I am giving the data in form number 3CB, I need to verify in the statement of a particular case, and that verification has been given by me. So that is our responsibility. As I said, obviously, as far as our responsibility is concerned, the objectives of tax audit is concerned, I always take this as the preliminary activity, because as an auditor, our responsibility is great, and we should be always reminded of this, our responsibility as well as objective, so that we do not fail or we do not be negligent when we are doing the audit. And that's why I always try to give this preliminary preamble before actually I go into the provisions of the law. Now, coming to the provisions of the law, section 44AB is the section of the Income Tax Act under which we are doing the audit. Everybody knows that there's a limit of the tax audit. If your turnover is above a particular limit, then the assessee is required to get his accounts audited. What is that limit? It was initially 1 crore as prescribed under section 44AB. During financial year 1920, it was increased to 5 crores with certain conditions. From 5 crores, it has now been increased to 10 crores. So for the financial year 2021, your limit for tax audit is 10 crores. So it does not end at the 10 crores. Question is, there are conditions. If you remember, up to 5 crores, there was a condition that your total receipts or the payments should not exceed 5% of the total receipts or payments in cash. So up to 5 crores, the limit in 1920 wordings were used as in cash. Now the conditions have changed. If you see the amendment which has been done where the limit has been increased to 10 crores, what it says, a 10 crore limit will be applicable in case when receipt and payment by mode other than account paid checks during the year does not exceed 5% of total receipt or payment, including amount received for sales, turnover or gross receipt during previous year and amount paid for expenditure during previous year, as the case may be. So the words in cash has been replaced by mode other than account pay checks. अभी ये एक बड़ा problem हो गया. इसको how would I verify? If you recollect, as per our institute guidance note, wherever I have to report that the transactions have been taken place by mode other than account pay checks, I used to give a disclaimer. You will please go to the section 48 capital sub bracket 3, wherein cash payments more than 10,000 has to be reported, and cash payments or other than by account pay checks have to be reported. So I give a disclaimer. If you go to 269 SS and 269T, wherein you have to report the transactions by mode other than account pay checks, you were actually giving a disclaimer. What was this disclaimer is that the checks which have been issued or the checks which have been received are sent to the bank, and those discharge copy of the checks have not been called for, and therefore we were not in position to verify that whether those were account pay checks. There could be a case where I am issuing the cross-bearer checks. Now, if I am issuing the cross-bearer checks for the payment, or I am receiving some amounts towards the turnover or towards my sales by way of cross-bearer checks, I have to technically calculate that to arrive at that whether those payments or receipts are not more than 5% of total payments and receipts. Now, let's take an example. If the client comes to your table and he says my turnover is 8 crore rupees, सर मेरे को ऑडिट करना चाहिए कि नहीं करना चाहिए. सो पहला मेरा क्वेश्चन ये आएगा कि आप मुझे ये प्रूव करके दीजिए कि आपके 5% से ज्यादा ट्रांजैक्शन इज नॉट बाय अ मोड अदर देन अकाउंट पे चेक्स. वो कैसे प्रूव करेगा? वो खाली मुझे बोल सकता है नहीं सर हम तो सब चेक से ही बिजनेस करते हैं, हमारा कोई कैश का बिजनेस ही नहीं है. देयर इज नो बिजनेस बाय वे ऑफ कैश. बट हाउ वुड यू से? Can he, if tomorrow ITO asks us similar questions, whether he will be able to prove? Because जो उसने चेक्स इश्यू किए वो तो उसने सप्लायर को दे दिए, वेंडर को दे दिए, पार्टीज को दे दिए, क्रेडिटर्स को दे दिए, उन्होंने अपने बैंक में जमा कर दिया. अभी अगर मेरे को यार आईटीओ को वेरीफाई करना है कि वो क्रॉस बेरर चेक था कि नहीं था, वो कैसे आप वेरीफाई करोगे? सो ये एक चैलेंज रहता है. ऑब्वियसली if as a chartered accountant, अगर client मेरे पास आता है, तो I will tell him कि if you are saying that this is a risk, tomorrow an ITO बोल सकता है कि आपका 8 करोड़ का turnover आप प्रूव करिए कि 5% was not exceeding was more by a mode other than account pay checks. It's your responsibility. Technically, as an auditor, I may advise, fine, you are saying that I will not do an audit. Audit is not required up to 10 crores because you are saying I can verify the cash payments, but I cannot verify cross-bearer payments or by any other mode other than account pay checks. By journal entries, some expenditure is been there. There is an income. Let's take an example. I am also supplying goods to a customer, and from the same customer, I am also buying the goods. So I never settle the amounts. I never make the payment, nor I receive. It is always settled by a way of journal entries. Now these are by a mode other than account pay checks. So journal entries are technically nothing but by a mode other than account pay checks. So you will have to add up all those to take the 5% criteria. You need to keep it in mind. As a matter of abundant caution, you may do an audit. I have been told in certain cities when if you go into a textile industry, textile में जो payments होते हैं वो majority cross bearer checks होते हैं. उसमें तो आप पहले से ही आपको क्लाइंट को एडवाइस कर सकते हैं कि आप प्रूव नहीं कर पाओगे तो आप ऑडिट करवा लीजिए ताकि आपको पेनल्टी नहीं लगे. So this could be a remaining the criteria that how will you verify, and all the assessors will have to take a call that whether if they are not able to prove this 5% by a mode other than account pay checks, they may get their accounts audited and we will do the audit whatever it is. So this is the one challenge. Now the second challenge which is coming is this was also prevalent in financial year 1920, and I know across India all the professions have taken a different view. It used to say 5% it should by the receipts and payment by cash other than by cash does not exceed 5% of total receipts or payment. Now this word total receipt or payment is creating a lot of confusion. What do you mean by total receipt or total payment? Including amount received for sales, turnover of gross receipts. So when they add word including amount received for sales, turnover of gross receipts, that means there is something else also. So if I'm receiving some loan and if I'm also making the sales, should I add total that I have received 1 crore rupees by way of loan? My sales is 1 crore. So should I make it 2 crores and then compare कि मेरा sales सिर्फ 10 lakh रुपया ही है 5% में, so it's going about? Or I should only restrict it to items which are in relation to profit and loss account. I should not take into consideration debtors or creditors wherein the sales have been booked in the previous years, but the recovery has happened into me. In my view, though there are different views, in my view, you should only look into an items which are booked into the current year's profit and loss account, which you are, if it is an income, you are offering for tax. If it is an expenditure, you are claiming a deduction. So the total for the purpose of this, total would include amounts reported under income in P&L and expenditure. For coming at the 5%, obviously out of that income, you need to compare how much has been received by a mode other than account pay checks. If you have not received any amount, obviously benefit of doubt will be that this has not been received by mode other than account pay checks and it will fall in the residuary category. So you need to keep it in mind. Third, so this is the basic which the amendments have brought a lot of people which are discussing. And as a matter of abundant caution, I've been seeing a lot of people are actually also doing an audit irrespective of that. Coming to third, now what happens if my turnover is less than 1 crore? If your turnover is less than 1 crore, technically section 44AD is not applicable and no audit is there. Even if it is your first year of your audit and it's a new entity, then also it is not applicable irrespective what is the income you have offered. But that is an exception to it, wherein turnover less than 1 crore also an audit may be applicable. If assessee has declared income as per section 44AD and wants to declare income less than 6%, 8% and of the turnover, and a period of 5 years have not elapsed from when he first opted for 44AD and his income exceeds maximum amount not chargeable to tax. तो अगर आपने पहले 44AD का कहीं बेनिफिट ले लिया है और उससे 5 साल elapse नहीं हुआ है, आपने 44AD बेनिफिट लिया है, तो अगर आपको 44AD से बाहर आना है, मतलब कि आपको 8% 6% ऑफर नहीं करना है, आपको उससे लेस ऑफर करना है और लेस और आपकी इनकम मैक्सिमम अमाउंट नॉट चार्जेबल टू टैक्स से ज्यादा है, मतलब in case of firm, even if you have an income of ₹1 technically and you have opted for 44AD and you want to come out of that 44AD, tax will be audit will be applicable. So please keep it in mind. Further, if you are opting for a presumptive SING, you can claim presumptive SING if in any profits shown as per regular business before the end of 5 years of opting for presumptive income, presumptive benefits will not be available for subsequent 5 years. So आपको ऑडिट तो करवाना ही है एक बार, प्लस ऑडिट करवाने के बाद भी रेगुलर प्रॉफिट्स आप ऑफर कर रहे हो, तो अगले 5 साल तक आप वापस 44AD पे मूव नहीं कर सकते. So these are the basic conditions. So I have, for the benefit of the members, I have also tabulated this in the manner of the flowchart, which gives you very easy, which we have already discussed. So under 44AB or 44AD, if your turnover is less than 1 crore, 44AB is not applicable. It will be only applicable if you have opted for 44AD for the previous years, then and you have 5 years have not elapsed, and you want to now offer for the regular business, and your amount exceeds the maximum income exceeds the maximum amount chargeable to tax. 44AB will apply. Coming to more than 1 crore, between 1 crore to crore, if you opt for 44AD, no audit applicable. If it is between 1 crore to 10 crores, then it is only applicable in case when the receipt and payment by mode other than account paid check exceeds 5%, which we have already discussed in length. If it is greater than 10 crores, yes, 44AB is applicable. Now, when you compare 44AB with 44ADA, it's little different as far as, if you see under the 44AB, if you are opting for 44AD ones and you are offering for 8%, 6%, you get an exemption. Now, let's take an example. I do not opt, even if it is below 1 crore, less than 1 crore, my 44AD is not applicable. Even if I offer less than 8% or 6%, which is not in the case of 44ADA. 44ADA के केस में अगर जो लिमिट है 44AB में लिमिट से 50 लाख की, 44ADA ये कहता है कि अगर आपका टर्नओवर 50 लाख के नीचे है और आप अगर 50% से कम इनकम ऑफर कर रहे हो तो ऑडिट कंपल्सरी. जो 44AD में नहीं है, बिजनेसमैन के केस नहीं है. So if their turnover is less than 1 crore and even if they offer less than 8% or 6%, they don't have to do an audit. They have to do audit only if they have taken a benefit of presumptive tax in previous years. But 44ADA प्रोफेशनल्स के केस में अगर 50 लाख के नीचे टर्नओवर है तो आपको 50% ऑफर करना ही है. अगर नहीं किए तो आपको ऑडिट करना है. More than 50 lakhs, there's no question about it. Now, there are certain issues which according to me, I thought it's very should be discussed. What are the important issues which according to me should be looked into it? Now, let's take an example over here. Question. Section 44AD vis-a-vis section 44AB. एक बिजनेसमैन दोनों में फॉल कर रहा है. So क्या करना? Section 44AD applies to a turnover of eligible business. It does not apply to all the businesses. If it's a commission business, 44AD does not apply. You should fall within the definition of eligible business. However, Section 44AB does not make any difference between such eligible or non-eligible business and refers to aggregate business turnover grosses. Suppose turnover of one or more eligible businesses 80 lakhs and of non-eligible businesses say 60 lakhs. Whether audit would be required under 44AB. ये मैं प्रिज्यूम कर रहा हूँ कि मेरी टर्नओवर लिमिट एप्लीकेबल 1 करोड़ है क्योंकि आई एम अ रिटेलर एंड मेरी जो एलिजिबल बिजनेस है, जो एलिजिबल बिजनेस का टर्नओवर 60 लाख है, बट जो एलिजिबल 80 लाख है और जो नॉन एलिजिबल बिजनेस है, मान लो कमीशन का बिजनेस है, वो 60 लाख है. सो मेरा जो ये 80 लाख बिजनेस है वो प्योरली कैश का है और दोनों को ऐड करूं अगर 80 और 60 तो मेरा टर्नओवर अबव 1 करोड़ हो गया. सो व्हाट शुड आई डू? वेदर ऑडिट शुड बी रिक्वायर्ड अंडर सेक्शन 44AB. Prima facie it appears that 44AB speaks of total turnover gross receipts. It would be applicable once the aggregate turnover gross receipts exceed the specified limit, whether from eligible or non-eligible bus. So अगर आप 44AB को रीड करोगे तो वो टोटल टर्नओवर की बात करता है जो 1 करोड़ 40 लाख है. उसमें से 80 लाख मेरा कैश रिटेल बिजनेस है, 60 लाख चेक का है कमीशन बिजनेस, लेकिन 80 लाख क्योंकि कैश है विच इज मोर देन 5%, तो आपको लिमिट 1 करोड़ अप्लाई हो तो आपको ऑडिट लगनी चाहिए टेक्निकली. आईसीआई का एक गाइडेंस नोट कहता है कि अगर इस 80 लाख के ऊपर मैं 44AD में इनकम ऑफर करूं, दैट इज 6% और 8% एलिजिबल एंड आई टेक अ बेनिफिट ऑफ 44AD, तो जब मुझे 44AD के लिए टर्नओवर को कैलकुलेट करना है तो 44AD का जो टर्नओवर है उसको कंसीडर नहीं करना है. सो आई विल कंसीडर माय टर्नओवर ओनली एज 60 लाख एंड बेस्ड ऑन 60 लाख टेक्निकली नो ऑडिट इन दिस केस. So I don't have to 60 lakhs. ये जो ICAI का व्यू है, this is also fortified by clause 12 of form number 3CD. अगर form number 3CD में देखो तो वहाँ पे एक स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन पूछा गया है is assessee offered any income on presumptive tax? इसका मतलब कि एक assessee जब टैक्स ऑडिट करवा रहा है तो भी उसके पास ऐसे कुछ बिजनेसेस हो सकते हैं जिनमें उसने presumptive tax का benefit लिया. So there can be two businesses. I am doing an audit for one business. In another business, I have taken a benefit of 4480. But the issue remains that for the purpose of taking a turnover under section 4480, जो eligible business है जिसका मैंने 4480 benefit लिया है, वो turnover मुझे नहीं consider करना चाहिए. Now, where assessing carries on both business and profession, let's take an example of interior decorators or architects. वो लोग क्या करते हैं कि वो डिजाइनिंग सर्विसेज भी देते हैं जो प्रोफेशनल इनकम है और कई बार टर्न की कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स भी लेते हैं जो मेरा बिजनेस है. लेट अस टेक एन एग्जांपल. अगर मेरी प्रोफेशनल रिसीट्स 51 लाख है तो मुझे टेक्निकली 44 अड्डा के हिसाब से ऑडिट लगती है क्योंकि अबव 50 लाख और मेरा एक बिजनेस रिसीट है 45 लाख. तो मुझे क्या करना है, ऑडिट करनी है कि नहीं करनी है, क्वेश्चन है. क्योंकि बिजनेस का टर्नओवर 45 है और इसका 51 है तो मुझे क्या बिजनेस को नहीं करना है, बिजनेस के लिए 1 करोड़ का टर्नओवर लिमिट लगाना है और प्रोफेशन के लिए 50 लाख लगाना है, तो सिर्फ प्रोफेशन का करना है, बिजनेस का नहीं करना है. अकॉर्डिंग टू मी देयर आर टू थिंग्स. अगर दोनों की कॉमन बुक्स है और प्रोफेशन और बिजनेस की आई एम मेकिंग वन सिंगल कॉमन बुक्स, then once the turnover of the profession increases, it goes beyond the 50 lakhs and I have to carry out the audit under section 4480A because I am not offering it under 50%. So audit is compulsory. Or if it is more than 50 lakhs, then also the audit is compulsory under section 44AB itself in case of the profession. अगर दोनों books common है, तो I cannot bifurcate it. I cannot bifurcate it. I will have to do the audit of complete books of accounts, irrespective of the business and the profession which is recorded in that particular business. So my business turnover may be 45 lakhs, but once I am auditing the books because of the professional income more than 50 lakhs, I will have to edit both the books. Let us take an example. I have two separate books. Profession अलग है, business अलग है. तो मैं क्या करूँगा? So if my profession is different and business is different, then according to me, you may not do an audit of the business because the turnover is less than 1 crore. I will only do an audit of the books containing professional income. I'll do an audit of that under section 4480. इसकी जो second business है, so income from business and profession में there can be two businesses. One business is which is more than 150 lakhs, which is a profession, and therefore it would be under the audit, and 45 would not be under the audit. Let us take the second example on the right hand side of my screen. My gross receipts of profession INR is only 21 lakhs. So 4480 में मैं offer कर रहा हूँ तो no audit requirement. Sales turnover gross receipts of business is INR 86 lakhs. Now if I add both the turnover, technically my turnover is going above 1 crore. So technically audit should be applicable if I read 4480. But in previous example, as I said, if professional receipts are 21 lakhs, which is below 50 lakhs, I'm eligible for 4480, which I am opting, then obviously this turnover has to be excluded. And the balance turnover is below 1 crore, therefore no audit is applicable in this case. So no audit requirement. Can an assessee set off brought forward business loss, unabsorbed depreciation against business income declared under section 4480? So मेरे पास कोई पहले business में there is some brought forward business loss. So I was claiming that business loss in my books of accounts and unabsorbed depreciation I was claiming. In the current year, I decide that I will opt for 4480. So I calculate my turnover के ऊपर 8%, 6%. I do a calculation and I offer for tax. Can I adjust against that profit of 8% or 6% the business loss or unabsorbed depreciation? According to me, business loss can be adjusted, but unabsorbed depreciation cannot. Why? If you read provisions of section 32(1)(2), which deals with an unabsorbed depreciation, technically unabsorbed depreciation is nothing but a depreciation of the current year. And when you read section 4480 of the presumptive tax, it says that all the expenses under section 28 to section 43D of the Income Tax Act would be deemed to be have been allowed. तो आपका जो unabsorbed depreciation है वो 32(1)(2) के वजह से current year depreciation treat होगा. और करंट ईयर डेप्रिसिएशन 4480 में अलाउ होता नहीं है. 4480 में वंस आपने 6% 8% ऑफर कर दिया तो मैटर इज ओवर. सो दैट्स व्हाई इट सीम्स दैट अनअब्सॉर्ब्ड डेप्रिसिएशन वुड बी डीम्ड टू बी हैव बीन अलाउड इन दैट पर्टिकुलर ईयर अंडर सेक्शन 4480 वंस यू ऑप्ट, और वो लैप्स हो जाएगा. सो till the time you have an unabsorbed depreciation, you may take a call that I may not opt for a 4480, so I may do a working, I may opt and higher profit and adjust the unabsorbed depreciation if ultimately I'm not paying tax more than income of 8% or 6%. Whether there could, let's take an example. Now, if I'm offering my income at the presumptive tax under section 44AD or ADA, whether there can be any disallowance under section 40A1A. This is not a point from a tax audit, because once you are opting, your income is returned under 44AD, आपको tax audit करनी ही नहीं है. क्वेश्चन ये है कि जब मैं 6% और 8% ऑफर कर रहा हूँ, जब आपने देखा कि आप अनअब्जॉर्ब्ड डेप्रिसिएशन भी क्लेम नहीं कर सकते, कोई भी खर्चा क्लेम नहीं कर सकते अंडर 28 to 43C, तो सिमिलरली there cannot be any disallowance under section 28 to 43D if you are offering taxation under 44AD or AD. उसके लिए काफी जजमेंट्स है जो आप स्क्रीन के ऊपर देख सकते हैं. सूरत ट्राइब्यूनल का भी है, मैप कंस्ट्रक्शन है, हैदराबाद ट्राइब्यूनल है, कि there cannot be any disallowance once you are opting for a presumptive taxation. Whether audit is applicable. Is tax audit applicable when income is exempt under section 10? Now section 10 में income exempt. Section 44AB does not stipulate exemption from tax audit in case of exempt income. 44AB ये कुछ भी नहीं कहता. If the trust is carrying on a business, I have a trust which is registered under section 10, 21, 23A, B, 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 C, which are all exempt, or section 11. Section 11 के लिए अलग है जो charitable trust आते हैं, but 10, 21 से लेके 23C में काफी funds आते हैं, काफी educational institution आता है. Question है, I may be carrying on some business activity also in those cases. So what will happen to that? Whether I should do a tax audit? Let's take another example. Cooperative society carrying on business enjoying deduction under section 80P. So all the cooperative societies are exempt under section 80P. All their income is exempt. So question is whether cooperative society can say that I will not do a tax audit if I'm doing a business. Let's take an example of a cooperative society which is buying and selling goods. ये सरकारी भंडार जैसी stores होते हैं जो अपने members को goods at cost बेचते हैं. So they buy the goods in the bulk and then they sell it to the members जो at cost होते हैं. Third, there are institutions, such institutions shall be governed by section 44AB if their turnover gross receipts in business exceeds the prescribed limit. So my understanding is that section 44AB will be applicable to those. So though my income is exempt, but I'm doing a business activity, ultimately that gets exempted under section 80P or under section 11. But if I'm doing a business, then the 44AB does not make any distinction and you should do an audit, number one. But जो मेरा ये view था, वो ट्राइब्यूनल ने रिवर्स किया. It is in fact my view is little conservative view, but income tax tribunal in one of the case, though it was in case of only Magnum fund, it is a fund, it's like a venture capital fund whose income is exempt under section 10, wherein it was held that even if my sales and gross receipts exceeds a particular limit, then also tax audit would be not applicable. So the practicing chartered accountants can take this view that even if my income is exempt, I will not do an audit. So though there it was, if you read 44AB, it says that yes, the audit may be applicable, but you can take this view, you can also take a support of this particular judgment. And of course, why should I treat it business itself? I would say it's not a business, it's an incidental to the main business. If I say it's a business tomorrow, in case of charitable trust, I may lose exemption under section 2 bracket 15. So it would be advisable to do not to do an audit in such cases. Similarly, whether the provisions of tax audit applicable to business under 11.4A. There's nothing in statute to suggest that tax audit under 44AB shall apply to business under 11.4A. Section 11 to 13 are independent of 5 heads of income. As long as the registration under 12A is intact, income cannot be computed under 5 heads of income. In case of charitable institutions, section 11 to 13 are independent code in itself. It is not a different code. The other heads of the total income are not applicable. So no other sections are applicable. Section 11 to 13 are applicable, and therefore also technically 44AB should not be applicable unless. So in once I am registered under 12A and my registration is intact, obviously I am not going to offer any income under the 5 heads of income. Even if that income becomes taxable by virtue of not investing 85% or not expending 85%, it would be taxable under section 11. Means I lose an exemption under section 11 and it will be taxable. So there is no tax audit in such cases. Even if you read under the 44AB, tax audit is a specific requirement of assessee having income under the head business and profession. So my income should be under the head business and profession. Then the tax audit would be applicable. Now, for the purpose of this 1 crore, 5 crores, 10 crores, what should be included in my turnover and what should be excluded from my turnover? There is a lot of litigations keeps on happening on this. So I thought it would be covered. Items to be included in turnover will include cash discount. It is a financing charge. Otherwise, then allowed in cash memo, sales invoice. अगर cash discount memo और sales invoice में दिया है, तो वो exclude होगा, वो turnover में count नहीं होगा. लेकिन एक cash discount बाद में दिया गया, after making an invoice, cash discount is given, it will be included in turnover. So that cash discount has not to be reduced. But if you see, if it is cash discount allowed in cash memo, sales invoice, trade discount, price adjustments, it has to be excluded from the turnover for that purpose. Sale of scrap will be included, sale of byproduct. If you are into business of shares and securities, then sale proceeds of shares, securities, special rebate which is in nature of commission on sale. So अगर आप कोई special rebate दे रहे हो customer को which is in nature of commission, तो आपको कम नहीं करना turnover से. Receipt of any kind. If you see what is to be excluded from turnover, any charges recovered towards packing, freight, forwarding, interest, etc. Sale proceeds of fixed assets, cash discount I have discussed, VAT and other indirect taxes collected, sale proceeds of fixed assets held as investments, and write back of provision. This will be excluded from turnover. On the other side, again coming to items to be included in turnover, cash incentives and duty drawbacks. So exporter का अगर कोई cash incentive मिल रहा है, duty drawback मिल रहा है, it will be form part of your turnover. Advances received from customers and forfeited. Customer का अगर कोई advance आया और आपने forfeit किया, तो turnover में गिना जाएगा. Exchange difference on export sales. Out of pocket expenses charged to clients in the invoices. It happens in case of us, that is professionals. Out of pocket हम charge करते तो वो technically आपके turnover में गिनना चाहिए for the purpose of 44AB. Liquidated damages, interest or rental income if it is your business income. Interest or rental income अगर business income नहीं है, income other head के अंदर है तो नहीं होगा. जैसे कि वैसे dividend on shares except for assessee dealing in shares. अगर आप shares and stocks में trading कर रहे हो तो अगर dividend भी receive हो रहा है तो आपको turnover में include करना है. Capital receipts exclude होंगे. Advances forfeited in respect of capital asset exclude होगा. Write back of low amounts no longer payable to creditors excluded. Share of profit of partner from a partnership excluded. So there are judgments of Bombay High Court in this that tax audit is only in respect of business carried on by the assessee and not in respect of his income from other sources. ये काय के लिए? Yes sir. Hello. Sorry. So if this is why I have brought this Bombay High Court judgment, let's take an example. I am doing an audit of a proprietary concern who is having his personal books also and his business books also. Question is whether I should do an audit of the personal books or not. Technically, you are not required to do an audit of personal books. Personal books may be different. There may be a lot of assets, lot of transactions happening in the personal books which are not to be covered under the tax audit. You are doing audit only of the business. So if your business books are different, you only have to do an audit of business books, not of shares, investment, not of this. But if they are combined books, then obviously you will have to cover the total books of accounts as discussed earlier also. Let's take an example. Delhi High Court का एक judgment है वो dividend के लिए कि अगर आप business trader हो, trader in shares and securities हो, and you are reporting as a business income, तो dividend को भी आपको business income ही treat करना पड़ेगा. So technically आपको turnover के लिए भी treat करना पड़ेगा. Now this is very important for advance receipt for services to be rendered to be included in gross receipts. ये एक प्रोफेशनल के लिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. लेट्स टेक एन एग्जांपल. आपको पता है कि आपके ऑडिटी जो क्लाइंट्स है वो 31 मार्च को ऑडिट फीस का प्रोविजन करते हैं और टीडीएस काट के आपको भेज देते हैं. टीडीएस सर्टिफिकेट आपके पास आता है. सो इट्स एज गुड एज एन एडवांस रिसीट बिकॉज़ यू विल हैव टू बुक टीडीएस अकाउंट एंड क्रेडिट इट टू इनकम क्वेश्चनर्स और शुड आई क्रेडिट इट टू लायबिलिटी. ICAI का अपना व्यू है that such receipts or liabilities are not part of gross receipts until services are received. दो गोपाल कृष्णा बिल्डर एक जजमेंट है जुना held the contrary and held that scope of work gross receipts is quite wide to include advances also. According to me, view of ICAI will be reliable. So जो TDS जो account करना है, you can actually book it as a liability. and you book. Technically जो TDS आपको claim करना है 31 मार्च 21, क्योंकि audit तो आपकी हुई नहीं है, लेकिन TDS सर्टिफिकेट आ गया है, तो वो अगर आप टेक्निकली आप वो TDS क्लेम नहीं कर सकते हो इनकम टैक्स में, आपके पास एक प्रोविजन है कि आप उस TDS को ट्रांसफर कर सकते हो नेक्स्ट ईयर में जब एक्चुअल में ऑडिट फीस का बिल बनेगा. सो टेक्निकली आपको TDS क्लेम भी नहीं करना चाहिए, और अगर आप एंट्री करते भी हो TDS को बुक्स में रिकॉर्ड, तो वो लायबिलिटी है, इनकम की जरूरत नहीं है. लेकिन क्योंकि आपको TDS क्लेम करना है और TDS को इनकम के साथ मैच करना है, सो जनरली ऑल आवर प्रोफेशनल्स, चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट फर्म्स who are following cash business accounts for TDS and also books an appropriate income to that extent, which may be done. How to determine sales turnover in case of shares and securities? That's a very important para. In case of a day trader, speculator, in case of security derivative transactions, commodity derivative transactions, technically आपको whether positive हो या negative हो, आपको profits का ही ऐड करना है, टोटल मानिए प्रॉफिट्स और लॉस की, एंड देन ओनली यू हैव टू कैलकुलेट. एक ऑप्शंस के लिए एक डिफरेंट है. सो इफ इट इज अ फ्यूचर्स ट्रांजैक्शंस और इफ इट इज अ स्पेकुलेशन ट्रांजैक्शंस, द सम टोटल ऑफ डिफरेंसेस वेदर पॉजिटिव और नेगेटिव हैज टू बी ऐड. सो एक पर्टिकुलर ट्रांजैक्शन में आपको प्रॉफिट हुआ है, दूसरे पर्टिकुलर ट्रांजैक्शन में डे एंड में आपको नेगेटिव हुआ है, सो ये माइनस और प्लस साइन को इग्नोर करना है, दोनों को ऐड करके टर्नओवर पकड़ना है. सिमिलरली फ्यूचर्स के लिए भी ऐसा होता है. ऑप्शंस के लिए डिफरेंट है, जहाँ पे पुट ऑप्शन होता है, कॉल ऑप्शन होता है, वहां पे जो आपने प्रीमियम पे किया है ऑन सेल ऑफ ऑप्शंस, उसको आपको टर्नओवर करना है. ऑप्शंस के केस में नेटिंग नहीं होगी. इफ यू पेड एनी प्रीमियम टू बाय ऑप्शंस, टू प्रीमियम ऑन सेल ऑफ ऑप्शंस बिकम्स योर टर्नओवर फॉर दैट पर्टिकुलर. और ये सब प्रीमियम जो आपने पे किया है ऑन सेल ऑफ ऑप्शंस, वेदर ये नेगेटिव है या पॉजिटिव है, कई बार आपको प्रीमियम डबल भी पे करना पड़ना है, उन सम टोटल को ऐड करना है. क्लियरिंग एंड फॉरवर्डिंग एजेंट्स, आपको पता है कि दे एक्चुअली कलेक्ट their agency fee is 1500 rupees, but generally they collect lot of charges to be paid to the government on their behalf. They collected, so those are reimbursement of expenses. According to me, they should not be, that should not be treated as forming part of their turnover for the purpose of 44A. सिमिलरली एडवर्टाइजिंग एजेंसी में जो एजेंसी फी एजेंसी जो आपसे कलेक्ट करती है एडवर्टाइजर से, और जो मीडिया, प्रिंट मीडिया या टीवी मीडिया को पास ऑन करती है, वो आपका रिइंबर्समेंट है. आपका टर्नओवर खाली आपका कमीशन गिना जाएगा. सिमिलरली ट्रैवल एजेंट्स के केस में भी सिर्फ कमीशन दिया जाता है. जो एयरलाइन की टिकट्स का फेयर है या ट्रेन की टिकट्स का फेयर है जो वापस आगे पास ऑन होता है, वो टर्नओवर नहीं होगा. Write back of amounts payable to creditors will be not be considered as turnover. That is well settled as per my ICI guidance. A very important point, most important according to me, whether a tax audit report can be revised. Let's take an example. I filed a tax audit report today and I find a mistake into it, whether I can revise. Technically, system allows you to revise. Before approval by the SSE, you can revise it. Even after approval, your system utility allows you to upload the revised exam. But the question is whether you can do it. See, tax audit report is a sacrosanct. There's a Madras High Court judgment which says that tax audit report cannot be challenged. It's a sacrosanct. It has a value. It has a great value in the eyes of the law. So once the tax audit report has been issued, it is presumed that it is correct. Now, if you want to do a revision, then if you are pleased, there is a procedure for it. That procedure is given under section 44AB technically. Now this procedure in section 44AB actually comes from a different guidance note. That is a separate guidance note on revision of audit report. Now this revision of audit report also applies to revision of tax audit report, because even a tax audit report is an audit report. So you need to follow that principles. These principles have been also noted down in our 44AB guidance note, which says that on what grounds the revision can happen, how it has to be revised, what disclosure needs to be made at the time of the revisions. So the revision can be on revision of accounts of a company after its adoption in AGM. So AGM delay हो गई कोई company की और accounts में revision हो गया, तो आपको tax audit आप revise कर सकते हो. There is a change of law, example retrospective amendment, or there is a change in interpretation of some circulars or judgment. So the tax audit of one's file can be revised on the above mentioned grounds, but please follow that procedure as given under 44AB. So this was with the, as far as provisions of 44AB is concerned, recent amendments are concerned, turnover limits are concerned, issues while calculating turnover, issues while calculating 5%, how to be calculated, what would include in turnover calculation. Now I will go into a clause-wise analysis of Form 3CD, which according to me is very important. And as I said, I am only concentrating on important clause with the limited time available to me. So the first clause is clause 12. I have briefly discussed clause 12, which says that whether the profit and loss includes profits assessable on presumptive basis. If yes, indicate the amount and relevant section. So if you are an auditor of an entity which has two businesses and who is also actually for a one particular business, he is getting an audit done, and another particular business he wants to take a benefit of presumptive taxation, then you need to report in clause 12. Now the question is, what is the responsibility as far as the reporting is concerned in the presumptive basis? How to ensure that the profit, because I am reporting it in clause 12, okay, 44 AD mein itna amount hai. If you go into 44 AD, it says you have to offer 6% or 8%, or the income as per books if it is higher. Now, as an auditor, if I'm reporting some figure here in respect of certain eligible business which are not under the audit, what would be my responsibility? Question is, how I will be calculated? And let's take an example. If those are common books, if they are not common books, I'm not worried. I may not report under clause 12 if they are not common books. But if they are common books, how would I do it? If a profit and loss account of assessee also includes the presumptive income, the common business expenditure has to be apportioned to arrive at the correct amount of profit credited to P&L and assessable on presumptive basis. The tax auditor in such a situation should arrive at fair and reasonable estimate of such expenditure on basis of evidence in possession of the assessee, or by asking the assessee to prepare such estimate, which should be checked by him. It is also necessary to mention the basis of apportionment of expenditure, common expenditure. However, if the tax auditor is not satisfied with the reasonableness of such apportionment, he should indicate in his tax audit report. So, आपको apportionment करना है, common books है, eligible business, non-eligible business. Presumptive tax जहाँ पे आप offer करो तो उसका expenses उसको allocate होना है, क्योंकि वो allow नहीं होना है. 8% आपको मिल गया, benefit matter है. So you cannot claim all those expenses under the audited books, under the regular books which are not eligible for 44 AD. So as an auditor, you will have to verify कि common अगर books है और एक books के लिए 44 AD आप apply कर रहे हो, तो expenses बराबर allocation हुआ है for the presumptive business, non-presumptive business. अगर अलग books है तो मेरे को clause 12 में reporting ही नहीं है. Mr. A has opted for a presumptive scheme under 44 AD in respect of one of his business. Whether auditor is required to mention details of such business in the audit report. As I said, then it is mandatory in case profit and loss of assessee includes any profit declared under presumptive scheme. So if your P&L is included, it's a common book, so आपको report करना है. If you are reporting, question is whether the amount of presumptive income has been properly calculated, whether you are supposed to report. According to me, no. Once you report it, it's proper. But you have to ensure जिस business का आप report कर रहे हो, उसमें बराबर expense claim किया हुआ है. कोई presumptive business का expenditure यहाँ पे claim नहीं किया, वो ensure करना. Presumptive income में क्या report किया वो correct है कि नहीं है, you may not look into it. Clause 16, amounts not credited to profit and loss account. So in the clause section, you need to report amounts which are not credited to profit and loss account. So technically, being they fall under section 28, or they are in nature of some refunds due which have been accepted by authority, or there are escalation claims, capital receipt, or any other item which you have not credited to P&L, you have to report here. Now the question is, I have applied for a GST refund. Whether I need to make any disclosure. An assessee has applied for a refund of GST, but the same wasn't credited in P&L account or ITC has been debited to P&L. Whether the disclosure is required. जहाँ पे आप इंक्लूसिव एक्सक्लूसिव बेसिस फॉलो करते हो, मतलब जो आईटीसी का आप रिफंड क्लेम करो वो आप जीएसटी रिसीवेबल रिफंड रिसीवेबल में बुक करता है, ये क्वेश्चन नहीं अराइज होता है. लेकिन लेट्स टेक आई एम फॉलोइंग एन इंक्लूसिव बेसिस जो अभी रेयरली फॉलो होता है कि मैं मेरे जो परचेसेस है उसको इंक्लूसिव ऑफ जीएसटी बुक करता हूँ और एक्सपेंस भी बुक कर लेता हूँ, और फिर जो आईटीसी मैं एक्सपोर्टर हूँ तो मेरे को उस आईटीसी का रिफंड मिलना, आई क्लेम अ रिफंड फ्रॉम द डिपार्टमेंट. वेदर द डिस्क्लोजर शुड बी मेड. Technically, if you have made a refund, you need not make a disclosure. But if you have made a refund and that is accepted by the department, but you have not received the refund, then you have to make a claim over here. Technically, if the refund has been accepted, then technically you should book as an income also. So the question may not arise if you have already credited to such profit and loss account, but you may not have credited, though it has been admitted because it has not been received. In such cases, a reporting should be done. Section 43 CA and 50 C. सबसे important. What does 43 CA and Section 50 C deals with? Where any land or building both is transferred during the previous year for a consideration less than value adopted or assessed or assessable by any authority of a state government, referred to in section 43C or 50C, please report the following: details of property, consideration received or accrued, value adapted or accessible, whether provisions of second provision to subsection 1 of section 43CA or fourth provision to clause 10 of section is applicable. So purchaser को भी tax लगेगा कि नहीं लगेगा उसका भी आपको question देना है. Now what is 43CA and 50C? Everybody knows 43CA is applicable generally in case of transfer of assets other than capital assets. When I talk of other than capital assets, that means generally who is builders, developers who classify the immovable land or building as in stock in trade. So it is applicable where an asset other than capital asset, but being a land or building or both, has been transferred and the value of such an asset is less than the value adopted by these stamp authorities. The value so adopted shall be deemed to be the full value of consideration and gain arising from this taxable as business. Similarly, 50C deals with in case of a capital asset being land or building. So 50C जब अप्लाई होता है जब ये आपका कैपिटल असेट है और आपने इसको क्लासिफाई भी कैपिटल असेट किया है, और 43C जब अप्लाई होता है जब आपने लैंड और बिल्डिंग को स्टॉक इन ट्रेड करके क्लासिफाई. तो इसमें इश्यूज बहुत है. व्हाट इज द इशू? लेट अस टेक एन एग्जांपल ऑफ केस ऑफ बिल्डर हु इज ऑफरिंग अ टैक्स ऑन परसेंटेज कंप्लीशन मेथड. सो जैसे जैसे बिल्डिंग कंप्लीट होती है, अगर मैंने फ्लैट ऑलरेडी बेच दिया अंडर कंस्ट्रक्शन, I offer a proportionate basis to the extent of amount received and construction completed over a period of the time. Now the question is, I had sold that flat for 50 lakhs और as per the tax auditor जब agreement register हुआ तो उसकी value आई 70 lakhs. 5% 10% से ज्यादा difference जो provision है उसका. अगर 10% है तो 20 लाख रुपया मुझे रिपोर्ट करना है. अभी ये 20 लाख मैं कौन से साल में ऑफर करूंगा? Should I offer till that for that particular unit or particular flat over a period of time on a percentage completion method? हर साल अगर वो 10 साल बिल्डिंग प्रोजेक्ट चलता है तो मैं 2% ऑफर करूं? ऑफर तो आप कर दोगे, अब रिपोर्ट कैसे करोगे टैक्स ऑडिट? Whether you should report in year 1 or in the year of registration or in the last year when actual transfer takes place? Question is, of course, according to me, if you strictly interpret the deeming provisions, it is actually imperative that there should be actual transfer of land or building or both. Now, transfer cannot happen on the day one when the land or building is not constructed or it's not ready. So, according to me, you can actually report in the last year when the transfer of asset on its existence, that is on completion, should be reported. Now, let's the question issue arises. In case agreement fixing the value of consideration is before the date of registration, when will the transaction be reported in Form 3CB? If reporting is required on registration year, how to identify the stamp duty value as on date of agreement? Like, now, at the time of the registration, there is a question. I may have an allotment later, which is 5 years before, but the agreement is registered today. So, on what date I have to report as a tax auditor? जब एग्रीमेंट बना उस दिन पे, क्योंकि फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ 43CA and 50C it says the comparison has to be done on date of agreement, but as an auditor you don't have an value, accessible value on the date of agreement because it's not registered. Only when you go for a registration you pay the stamp duty, you have a comparison amount available. Technically, how would you report? In my humble view, the reporting should be on the registration basis. But if you report on the registration basis और वहाँ पे difference high है क्योंकि फ्लैट तो 5 साल पहले बुक किया था और 5 years के बाद registration हो रही है तो definitely there would be difference in value. And if auditor reports, all those cases will come in the scrutiny. So what do you do? How do you come out of this? In my view, you will have to report on date of registration only, because if you go on date of reporting on the date of agreement, तो आपके पास वाकई उस दिन की स्टैम्प वैल्यू नहीं है. फिर आपको ऑडिटर को बोलना पड़ेगा कि आप उसकी स्टैम्प वैल्यू निकाल के लाइए फ्रॉम द गवर्नमेंट अप्रूवल सो आई कैन रिपोर्ट इट. एंड अगेन आफ्टर द डेट ऑफ, बिकॉज रजिस्ट्रेशन के बेसिस के ऊपर एसएफटी का ट्रांजैक्शन जाएगा तो आईटीओ तो उसको रजिस्ट्रेशन के डेट पे वापस स्क्रूटिनी में लेगा. सो यू विल हैव अ टू डिफरेंस पीरियड्स. इट हैज टू बी ऑन द डेट ऑफ रजिस्ट्रेशन अकॉर्डिंग टू मी. And the date of registration, if the difference is high, you can give by way of notes stating that though on the date of registration there is a difference between the transaction value and the stamp duty value, but the actual agreement date was 3 years 4 years back, and therefore this should not be considered. You can give that beneficial note. 43CA 50C whether applies to leasehold right or development rights. Leasehold rights को नहीं लगता है because 43CA 50C clearly talks of land, building or both. So land, building or both does not include the lease rights. Those are other capital assets. It will not be applicable. Similarly, दो डेवलपमेंट एग्रीमेंट पे लगेगा क्योंकि डेवलपमेंट एग्रीमेंट इज एज गुड एज ट्रांसफर ऑफ लैंड और बिल्डिंग अंडर द ट्रांसफर ऑफ प्रॉपर्टी एक्ट, सो इट विल बी एप्लीकेबल. Coming to clause 21, amounts debited to profit and loss account being the nature of so and so. So under clause 21A, you have to give the details of this expenditure. Just mentioning the details does not mean you have to disallow in the computation, but you have to give it details. Similarly, under clause 21 subclause B, you have to report amounts inadmissible under section 40A and under C 40B, which deals with partners' remuneration and commissions. Now, what are the issues of what are the reporting? Let's take an entrance fee paid towards a life membership of club. So if I want to become a member of some association, like we have a Jain Chartered Accountants Federation, Gyanstation, some club, and I pay a life membership entrance fee, whether that is disallowable or not, question is that. There are judgments to that effect from Delhi High Court, Bombay High Court, Gujarat High Court, which says that the entrance fee is paid for the benefit of the directors in case of a private limited company is not disallowable, and it's a revenue expenditure, it should be allowed. But the question is whether you have to decide disallowability. No, आपको report तो करना है. You have to report entrance fee paid and amounts paid towards cost of services. Though this is an allowable expenditure, so you may not disallow in the computation of income, but the reporting has to be done. 40A1A. 40A1A में आपको disallow करना, there is no problem, there is no issue. But let's take an example. You have entered into a contract for a construction of building, और उस building को आप capitalize करते हो, और उस contract के ऊपर आपने TDS का default किया. आप reporting करोगे chapter 6 in default of TDS in clause whatever clause applicable. Question is whether you will disallow 40A1A. तो आप claim तो कर ही नहीं रहे हो. Ultimately उस building को आप capitalize कर रहे हो और आप depreciation claim कर रहे हो. तो क्या आपको proportionate depreciation disallow करना चाहिए क्या? Question is, according to me, it is not disallowable. The 40A1A applies only to revenue expenditure. It will not applicable to capital expenditure, and therefore there cannot be disallowance even if TDS is not deducted, and there is a violation of Chapter 6. A separate proceedings can happen under Section 201, but 40A1A will not be applicable. It will be only applicable to revenue expenditure. For this, I also draw support from certain judgments of Bombay and Ahmedabad IT, which I have mentioned on this thing, that is plasmat machine manufacturing, which says that disallowance under section can be made only from an expense which is claimed in profit and loss account. Now the question may arise, ITO करता है कि depreciation भी तो आप claim कर रहे हो. Sorry, depreciation is not a claim of expenditure which can be disallowed. Depreciation is a charge. It's a charge of the. It's a charge. It's not an expenditure, and therefore it cannot be disallowed. Coming to second issues of 40B, partners remuneration, associated engineers and allied products. What it says, as you know, 40B deals with the allowability of partners remuneration paid by a partnership firm. The requirement is that you should pay it should be as per the deed, the partner should be working partner. Question is whether as an auditor you can decide on the reasonability. According to me, no, because reasonability is not, there's a fixed formula given under the section 40B. There's a fixed. So section 40B does not talks of accessibility or reasonable. Once the formula is given, if the calculation is as per the formula, it is as per the partnership deed, there cannot be a disallowance. 40B. Similarly, MAC industries, the question is whether the interest which is chargeable under income from other sources, while calculating section 40B formula जब आप apply करते हो तो book profit calculate करना है, whether interest should be removed from that. No, you should not remove interest because interest forms part of the book profit. So for the purpose of this book profit, interest cannot be removed. So ultimately, if you see into this judgment, ultimately the question is you cannot challenge despite if it is as per the Partnership Act, it has to be allowed. All the whether whatever may be named, it may be called as a bonus as per the partnership deed, it may be called as a remuneration, it will be allowed. Clause 21E. In case of an India's financial statements, if liability increases due to change in actual assumptions taken to calculate the provision of gratuity, which is debited to OCI, whether entity can claim the deduction of such additional liability. As per the Indians, if the liability of gratuity increases on basis of actual valuation and that liability increases is on account of change in assumption, it should not be debited to profit and loss, but it should be shown as OCI. So it is recognized as OCI by as far as Ind AS 19 is concerned. That is below the line. Question is whether that can be claimed under income tax and under section 40A bracket 7. According to me, it can be claimed. 40A7 clearly says if increase in the provision of gratuity is attributable to such change in actuarial assumption, it shall not be disclosed. Therefore, it is not to be disclosed under clause 21A because it is allowable expense. Related party transactions. 48(2)(b) requires you to give the details of payments made to related party as to specified person as defined under the 48(2)(b). Question is whether you can decide that what is excessive or not, what is unreasonable. No. As an auditor, you only have to report the figures, nothing else. It's only an information. It has no impact on allowance or disallowance. Disallowance under section 43B. Important point. Excess payments of GST lying in electronic credit cash ledger, whether can be claimed as deduction under 43B. Amount deposited in ECL, electronic cash ledger, although not adjusted against tax liability and lying as at balance as 31st March 21 amounts to payment of tax. So question is मैंने कैश इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर में पैसा जमा कर दिया गलती से 31 मार्च 21 को और अभी वो एडजस्ट ही नहीं होने वाला है क्योंकि मैंने इतना एक्सेस डिपॉजिट कर दिया. Question is whether I should claim that as under deduction under 43 because I have paid it. There is a judgment in case of excise regime when in Senvet credit which was lying and remained unutilized was allowed under section 43B because that was written off in the books. Now, if that is written off in the books, it was allowable. Whether I can extend this analogy under section 43B, क्यों मेरा तो cash payment हो गया. 43B says any tax paid will be allowed. So I paid tax, though it's lying under ECL. Though under GST law, it says that the tax payment will not happen till the time you actually file GSTR 3B and that tax is adjusted against ECL. So this is a disputed issue. So if it is a long drawn and you are not able to claim electronic cash ledger, according to me, you can claim that deduction under 43B. एक तो मेरा 100 रुपया जाम हो गया. I am not able to claim or adjust it because I have wrongly deposited. For claiming refund, it may take 2 years sometimes. So it's better at least I claim 30% deduction. When I claim, I get a refund, I will offer for taxation. Following counts. How the deduction of interest charged to statement of profit and loss due to effective interest rate method of Ind AS should be allowed under the Income Tax Act. See, what does the Ind AS says? That any processing fees paid to the banks or FIs cannot be debited to P&L. It has to be appropriated over a period of the loan. So, accounting standard में हम ऐसा नहीं करते हैं, लेकिन Ind AS में ये करते हैं कि processing fees को एक ही साल में डेबिट नहीं करते, उसको हम एलोकेट करते हो इंटरेस्ट के साथ और इंटरेस्ट के साथ उसको ओवर अ पीरियड अगर 5 इयर्स का लोन है तो उस प्रोसेसिंग फीस को 5 इयर्स में एलोकेट होकर P&L में डेबिट होता है. क्वेश्चन है प्रोसेसिंग फी तो मैंने पे कर दी, whether I should claim it under section 43B. According to me, it is allowable in the year 1. So भले Ind AS में आपने इसको चार्ज नहीं किया लेकिन प्रोसेसिंग फी को आप डेबिट कर सकते हो और डिस्क्लोजर आपको करना चाहिए क्लॉज 26 में. Prior period expenditure. If statutory auditor does not consider an item as a prior period expense, whether the tax auditor feels that such item should be considered as prior, should the expense be disclosed in clause 27? Statutory auditor और tax auditor different है. Statutory auditor ने उसको prior period expense treat नहीं किया books में. तो क्या tax auditor का view अगर है prior period तो उसको disclose करना चाहिए? Yes, irrespective. If you feel it's a prior period as a tax auditor, you should disclose. Amount forfeited due to non-materialization of transactions. Clause 29 capital A. Mr. A, a sole proprietor, agreed to transfer his personal property to Mr. X and received some non-refundable advance against such deal. Sale could not materialize as Mr. X could not pay the whole amount and the advance money was forfeited by Mr. X. What are the disclosure requirements? Section 56(2)(9, जो income from other source में, such amount which is forfeited is now taxable. In the case if it is forfeited, the above clause requires to report such an advance received from the buyer but forfeited due to non-materialization. Auditor is not required to report any such forfeited amount if it is in respect of a personal capital asset or stock in trade. So अगर ये capital asset है तो ही आपको report करना है 56(2)(9 के, because in 56(2)(9 applies in case of capital asset, it does not apply in stock in trade. Similarly, अगर personal capital asset है जो personal books में appear हो रहा है, business books में appear ही नहीं हो रहा है because you are an auditor of the business books, then obviously I will not report under 56(2)(9. Number 1. Number 2, where actually forfeiture की entry pass हुई है. So there may be an agreement wherein you have received an advance. Agreement के terms के हिसाब से आप अभी उसको refund भी नहीं करने वाले हो. लेकिन जब तक assessee books of accounts में entry pass नहीं करता है forfeiture की, he has to actually forfeit the amount. क्रेडिटर को जिससे पैसा है उसको डेबिट करना है और मुझे या तो कैपिटल में लेके जाओ या इनकम में लेके जाना है, तभी इस क्लॉज में रिपोर्ट होगी और टैक्स भी तभी होगा 5629. अगर ये पर्सनल असेट है, पर्सनल बुक्स में आ रहा है, तो मैं तो उसकी ऑडिट ही नहीं कर रहा हूँ technically, because as I said, we will do audit, restrict our audit to business books, not personal books, unless and until they are merged books. Then I will cover those transactions. Clause 31, 269 SS and 269 ST. Mr. A, SS and ST सबको पता है. Let's take an example of this. Mr. A received gifts in following manner: 2,50,000 each from his father and brother on a single day. Rupees 1,80,000 each from his 10 friends on occasion of his marriage. Whether section 269 ST applied. What is section 269 ST? Section 269 ST says that you will not receive an amount of 2 lakh rupees or more in aggregate from a person in a day, in respect of a single transactions, in respect of transactions relating to one event or occasion of a person, otherwise than by an account pay check or an account pay bank draft or use of electronic clearing system through a bank, but then you need to report. Now, if you receive a 2,50,000 each from his father and brother, technically any sum received from relatives shall not be taxable. They are not taxable. But 269 ST to invoke ho jata hai. Provides that no amount shall be received in excess of 2 lakhs from a person on a single day. So you have violated 269 ST. So though it may be exempt under 56(2)(10), but your reporting would have to be done. Similarly, gift from friends rupees 1,80,000 each. Now there shall not be taxable under 56(2)(10) technically, because any sum received on occasion of marriage is not taxable. It is not also a violation of 269 ST, because single person limit is 2 lakhs. Then obviously I will not, because I'm not liable, there's no violation. Why this point is that you need not look into its taxability. 269 SS and ST transactions are totally independent as far as its taxability is concerned. A transaction may be exempt and it may not be brought to tax. Still, you may be liable to penalty under the provisions of 271(a), and you would have violated 269 SS and ST, and therefore you may have to report. So the reporting is then important. You need not go into taxability. Let's take an example. Another. Company B purchased goods from Company A worth rupees 3 lakhs on credit basis. Company A has dues payable to Company C. Company B has dues receivable from Company C. On the basis of internal arrangement between three companies, Company A receives payment from Company B by set off of intercompany balance. Journal entry in short. अगर मैं journal entry से करता हूँ, whether settlement of debt by a book entry is restricted, should I report under Form 3CB? Would it apply to 269 SS and T in such cases? There are divided rules as far as courts. Now, if you see Bombay High Court and Delhi High Court, Bombay High Court says that in case of journal entries, there is a violation of 269D and 269 SS also. Triumph International, Bombay High Court says 269T violate hua hai because it's a journal entry. If you go Ajitnath High Tech Builders, it says you have violated 269 SS, but being a reasonable cause, because there is no tax loss, no penalty be to levied under 271D. Now, question is, if penalty, there is a reasonable cause, no penalty be leviable, whether I should report in this column. As an auditor, your duty is to report. You are not to decide whether it was a reasonable cause, tax is applicable or not applicable. You have to report once it is in a contravention. Delhi High Court says that object of 269 SS is to prevent transaction in currency. It is not intended to affect cases where debt or liability arises on account of book entry. So book entries के लिए आपके contrary judgment है. Bombay High Court बोलता है violate होता है, Delhi High Court बोलता है violate नहीं होता है. तो आपको क्या करना है? According to me, as an auditor, you should report it. You may clarify in the observation that Delhi High Court says so and so, Bombay High Court says so and so. If assessor is in Delhi High Court, he may not report also. If he stays in Maharashtra, he will report it at least. He will have to report it. If he stays anywhere else, he may take a favorable view of Delhi High Court and do not report it. Whether a direct deposit of cash in the bank account of the company by a director is a violation or not. Now again, you will have to report. If the cash is deposited and that cash amount you have credited to bank account, debited to bank account and credited to loan account, so it amounts to a loan taken from a director, you will have to report. There is a judgment of Mangala Builders wherein it says that it's a reasonable cause and no penalty could be levied. Otherwise, checks bounce हो रहे थे, तो checks bounce हो रहे थे, तो director ने लाके cash deposit कर दिया. So you should, no penalty should be imposed. Again, I'm bringing this to you that you should not look into it. आपको report करना है. Penalty नहीं लगेगी. He will fight, he will dispute it, but you please report. 32B, change in shareholding. Whether change in shareholding of startup company is to be reported in clause 32B of Form 3CD. Technically, clause 32B applies only to closely held company. It seeks information of change in shareholding of the company in previous year, due to which loss incurred before the previous year cannot be allowed to be carried forward in terms of 79. 79 provides losses incurred. So if there is a change in the shareholding of at least 51%, you have to make a reporting. आपको यहाँ पे report करना है. So as a tax auditor, you will check whether there is a change in shareholding. जिस साल का लॉस है उस साल में क्या शेयर होल्डिंग था, और जिस साल में आप शेयर होल्डिंग चेंज हो रहा है, क्लेम कर रहे हो, लॉस को क्लेम कर रहे हो, उसमें क्या शेयर होल्डिंग आपको करना है. यू हैव टू वेरीफाई रजिस्टर ऑफ मेंबर्स एंड कंपेयर. इसमें एक ये इश्यू आता है कि लेट्स टेक एन एग्जांपल. आपको ग्रुप वाइज देखना है कि क्या. अभी इसमें इफ यू सी ईयर 1, ईयर 2 एंड ईयर 3 इन माय एग्जांपल्स, इन ईयर 1 ग्रुप ए एंड बी हैड 100% होल्डिंग, 95 and 5. ईयर 2 में 40 और 60 हो गया. सो देयर इज नो प्रॉब्लम. ग्रुप के बीच में ईयर 1 टू ईयर 1 सेम रहता है, तो ईयर 1 का लॉस ईयर 2 में एडजस्ट हो सकता है. ईयर 3 में भी 50% रिमेन होता है. एक भले 95 वाला 1% हो गया, बट ए और बी पूरे ग्रुप का amongst A and B it remains 50% for year 1, year 2 and year 3, so it would be allowable. So technically for the purpose of section 79 you have to say group. कोई नया शेयर होल्डर अगर 50% हो जाता है और ए बी का 50% नीचे रिड्यूस होता है तो डिसअलाउ होता है, तो रिपोर्टिंग आती है. लेट अस टेक एन एग्जांपल. ईयर 1 में लॉस है 10 लाख का, जब जहां पे ए और बी का 100% था 80-20. ईयर 2 में और 15 लाख का लॉस हुआ, जहां पे रेशियो चेंज हो गया, 30 और 70 हो गया, मतलब बी एंड सी का हो गया. So technically ईयर 1 का लॉस मुझे ईयर 2 में अलाउ नहीं होना चाहिए. क्यों? शेयर होल्डिंग जो ए और बी की 50% से ज्यादा थी, अभी ईयर 2 में 50% नहीं है. लेकिन जब मैं ईयर 3 में जाता हूं तो ए और बी की वापस शेयर होल्डिंग बढ़ के 50% से ज्यादा होता है. So question is whether this 10 lakhs loss will be allowable in year 3? According to me, yes, because ए और बी की जो 50% थी ईयर 1 में, वो ईयर 3 में भी सेम है, मोर देन 50%. ईयर 2 का भी लॉस ईयर 3 में अलाउ होगा. यस, अगेन because B and C की जो more than 50% थी year 3 में, वो भी उनकी ज्यादा ही है 50% से, so I should be allowed. Intermittent year का कोई problem नहीं है. What you have to do is you have to compare the year in which the loss has been suffered and the year in which you are adjusting. There are two views. One view says कि एक बार intermittent year में ये loss का परसेंटेज चेंज हो गया, तो ये जो 10 लाख आप कैरी फॉरवर्ड कर रहे हैं ईयर 2 में आईटी के रिटर्न में, वो उस टाइम पे डिसअलाउ हो जाएगा, तो आगे कैरी फॉरवर्ड नहीं होगा. अकॉर्डिंग टू मी दैट्स नॉट अ करेक्ट व्यू. व्यू 1 वुड बी इट वुड बी अलाउबल, और पंजाब हाई कोर्ट का एक जजमेंट है जो आपको सपोर्ट करता है. कमिंग टू लास्ट 2-3 क्लॉजेस बिफोर आई वाइंड अप. Quantitative details in case of manufacturing concern, the auditor has failed to ascertain yield of finished goods because of different measurement unit of raw material and that of finished. How to report this? If assessor is engaged in manufacture of goods, the yield and shortage cannot be ascertained of the input of raw materials and the output of finished goods are recorded in different units. अगर end product standard item है and can be converted back, if the end finished good is a standard item and it can be converted back and related to input of raw material and in the same unit of measurement, it should be done. If it is not possible, then tax auditor will report it in the facts that it's not possible. Quantity details बहुत ज्यादा है, तो आपको क्या करना चाहिए? Due to complexity of business, assessors do not have quantity paper. एक retail business है, general shop है, medical shop है, 1000 items है, कैसे आप report करोगे? I think so you can give a observation that due to nature and complexity of business of assessor, it is not possible. Deemed dividend 222E. If assessee has received any amount in nature of dividend referred to in 222E of that, following details should be disclosed. Amount received, date of receipt. So अगर कोई भी amount receive हो रहा है, अगर आप auditor, आपका client कोई भी amount receive करता है from its group concern, sister concern, किसको applicable होता है? जहाँ पे advance or loan by company to shareholder is greater than 10%. Advance or loan by company to concern where shareholder has substantial interest is 20%. So अगर मेरे को मेरी group concern से receive होता है जिसमें मेरा 20% से ज्यादा stake है, और या तो common shareholding है, एक ही shareholder की एक company में more than 20% और दूसरी company में more than 10% है, तो भी apply हो जाता है. So this will have to be reported. Who has to report? The amounts which has been received. Now, while reporting this, you will have to look into a beneficial shareholder. Let us take an example of HUF. HUF के नाम पे shares issue नहीं होते, shares कर्ता के नाम पे issue है. तो आपको HUF के केस में रिपोर्ट करना, अगर HUF को अमाउंट मिलेगा, कर्ता को मिलेगा, तो whether you have to report? Technically no. This is applicable to beneficial shareholder. So if amounts are received by HUF and you are the auditor of HUF and he is the beneficial shareholder who has contributed to the shares, you should report. So these are the two judgments of Supreme Court which says the beneficial shareholder code 222 applicable. 222 it does not apply to commercial transactions, regular business transactions, या तो कोई money lending business है या amount received towards corporate gain जो मेरा normal course of business है उसको deemed dividend apply नहीं होता है. Para 40 applicability of ratios, question ये आता है कि whether professionals or service providers को ratio apply होता है, according to me नहीं apply होता है. Lot of our chartered accountant friends report the net profit ratio, but technically it's not applicable. You may not report it. Question is ratio has to be given individual business wise. So if I have a manufacturing business, I have a trading business also. What should I do? Whether I should report separately or no? No, you have to give a business as a whole. Though it does not make sense because a manufacturing business will have a GP of 30%, trading business will have a GP of 3%. दोनों को आप merge करोगे तो 5% आएगा result because trading turnover may be high and so. But still you have to report as a business as a whole, though it may not make any sense. Last two issues. There is a difference in opinion between tax auditor and the client with respect to applicability of TDS provision. How to report such difference in the tax auditor? आप बोल रहे हो कि TDS लगेगा, आपने नहीं काटा, वो बोलता TDS applicable ही नहीं है. There's a different view. There are different judgments, contrary judgments. So what do you report? एक view ये बोलता है if the tax auditor and client have difference of opinion with respect to applicability of TDS provision, such consent shall be reported in clause 3 of form 3 से. आप observation में दे दो. एक दूसरा व्यू ये बोलता है if the tax auditor has qualified his report, express an opinion or difference in opinion on particular item, assessor may take a different view while preparing his return of income. In such case, it is advisable for assessor to state his viewpoint and support the same by any judicial precedent. So you give it in your observations, support it by a judicial precedents. Thank you very much. We have 5-10 minutes, so I thought I will try to take it fast. And if we have any questions now, we can definitely take it up. I have gone little faster to complete it well within time. So thank you for your patience for that. If I missed something.
Wonderful session. I would like Akshay to assist for taking up the Q&A session. Over to you, Akshay. So kindly go through the questions which we can take up in the session.
I can take a question में है श्वेता का. I think so. If turnover is less than 50 lakhs, section 44 AD is advisable or one must observe to maintain books of accounts. It's purely your choice. 44 AD अगर 15 lakhs से ज़्यादा है और आपके books of accounts से profits कम आ रही है तो आप maintain करिए और audit कराइए. Why you should offer more? Because for 44 ADA says that you have to offer 50% otherwise. Generally in the professional firms we have seen now the margins are not 50% which initially it used to be. So according to me, 44 ADA should not be 50%, it should have been 33% technically. Then the people would have offered it. In spite of filing under section 44 AD, Dikshit, in spite of filing under section 44 AD, some banks are asking for balance sheet and profit and loss. How to tackle this? Technically say if somebody is actually taking up bank limits and then definitely he will have to get the accounts audited irrespective of it. And you will have to submit the books of accounts. Now, if you submit a books of accounts to the bank, when the profits are higher than 8% or 6%, then you are inviting trouble from the income tax officer. Because as per 44 AD, you have to offer 8% or 6% or profits as per books of accounts. So once you have submitted books of accounts to the banks, then obviously you cannot claim before the income tax department because obviously those are in the public domain, and there are judgments which says that if you have offered the tax books to the public to the bankers and those are available, we'll go by that, and if those are higher, that will be applicable. So technically 44 AD should not be applicable and you should do audit in such cases. What would be turnover in case of stamp vendor? Commissions, nothing more than that. Nina Jain.
We can wait for a few more seconds if any questions are there. The participants can also refer this video for their queries while doing tax audit if they face anything to Sir's video. It was very enlightening and Sir has covered all the important amendments and Tax Audit. We were YouTube as well as Facebook Live, both was there. So you can visit either Gyaanstation's Facebook page or YouTube page to refer this video in future. I heartily thank Piyush sir for taking this session for us, and definitely it's going to be very helpful. And as we all know, income tax side glitches which we all are facing, so sir, more sessions on income tax are in demand. So we would like to see you more taking up such sessions.
It will be my pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you everyone for joining today. Stay tuned with Gyanstation. Do visit and register at www.gyanstation.in for getting updates of our regular webinars. Thank you very much. Oh, here
Thank
we
you
end our
very much.
today's.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Hello. Yeah.